Right, so this is a video on the process that I use to get MakeHuman files from Mixamo and prep them in Blender. I'm going to make a separate video on how to export it and get it set up in Unreal. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to File, we're going to import, obviously, right? And I'm going to go to Downloads. And this is the one I have. So when you click on one, it is absolutely perfect. You don't need to click on any of the options. You're just going to import it right away. We have it. Down here we have the keyframes, so that's the animation by frame, and that's good. But the issue lies in two things, which is A, that she is a Pepto-Bismol girl, and B, that her files are incredibly unnamed. And these are actually pretty easy fixes. What we're going to do first is we're going to do the textures, because out of the two, those are the hardest by far. And the thing that makes them hard is the eyeballs, which we're going to save for last. So we have the eyebrow mesh, we have her skin, we have her hair, and of course we have her eyes. All of these will be renamed later on, and the reason we rename the files is because when we export it to Unreal, Unreal is going to basically look at it, and it's going to imagine that you're in a grocery store, and you're looking for Jell-O, and all of the Jell-O containers have the exact same box art, and they have the exact same name, and you cannot tell what it actually is until you open it up and look inside. Unreal's not going to do that. It's just going to grab whatever package it could reach first and assign it to everybody else that has the same name, aka Jell-O. And that's basically why we have to do this, so that Unreal doesn't just grab a random named file that everybody might share because we didn't rename everything. Because things like, like the animation might be the same, or we might have the same eyebrows, but they might be different colors, or, our hair might have the same hair name, but it's a different hairstyle. So it can get really complicated and really messy fast. So if we keep files clean in the beginning, we'll be really good later on. Now to actually do the materials, we're going to go over to the material properties. And we're just going to click on the eyebrows first. It's pretty good to navigate your meshes through your file collection, so you can definitely click on them over in the view port, but I think it's a little bit harder and it's easy to get confused. So what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way down here to the base color, and we're going to click on this. It already is linked, but when we export the FBX from MakeHuman, for some odd reason, there is a big disconnect between where the material is and where the model and mesh is. So we have to reattach everything by hand. So what we're going to do to make this easier is we're going to click on that, copy it, and save it. So next time I go in and import, I can just quickly put the URL in and go right to where I need to go. We're going to do this. Click on the eyebrow, relink it. Now the correct eyebrow is linked. And we're actually going to zoom in because it's a little bit darker than before. However, it isn't actually her hair color, and it's still really pink. And what we're going to do to fix this is we're going to go down here, and we're going to go to the settings, and we'll go to the blend modes. Opaque will make it super bright. We use opaque for everything except for the eyes, which we'll do last because they're really a challenge. We're going to go over to her skin. As you can see, a lot of things start off in alpha blend, which makes it actually kind of see-through. A big issue is that when you're doing the eyes, the skin might change back and things might change back. Usually it's the skin that has the biggest issue for some reason. So before you export, double check that everything's in the right blend mode so that you don't accidentally get a blend that you don't really like. We're going to go back up here, relink it, do this, and there's her hair. Well, her skin, sorry, excuse me. As you can see, and we're going to double check, it's opaque, perfect. Next is her hair, which again, base color. Go back, relink, use my URL, and link. So everything's looking pretty good. As you can see, the hair is see-through because the blend mode is on alpha again. Opaque, and it is perfect. Now the big thing is the eyes. The eyes are really rough and they're very hard to do, but we can get it to that. We can do it together, so don't worry too much about it. We're gonna do there, just staring us down. Not freaky at all, I love it. So what we're gonna do first of all is we're gonna do a preview. So for the eyes especially, we need this thing right here, the material ball, to be really solid, to show up. What I'm actually going to do is something a little bit weird. I'm going to go over to the material, make them bright white, because that's a solid color. As you can see, the high poly is actually transparent. And even if I mess with the blend modes, it's still going to have some issues. Going material, I think, is the easiest way to do it. But we run into the issue that the base color doesn't have that that little extend menu, which makes it hard, of course, to link our image. So you're going to click on this little yellow dot next to it, and we're going to go over to image texture. And as you can see, I'll turn it totally black, and we're going to open a hot link again, and we're going to put in her eye. It's now attached, but as you can see, it doesn't look that great. So what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way down here, we're going to go over to this, and we're going to make it alpha hashed, and we're also going to keep it opaque. That's for later on. The real issue is here in the alpha channel, we need to make this also an image texture. Right, open. And there it goes. So that's how you deal with the eye. You can use any of the alpha channels, I'm pretty sure. But it has to be an alpha. I don't think the shadow mode matters too much, so you can leave it as opaque. As you can see, now she has her eyes, which was the hardest part of this entire thing. Now, we have all the textures applied, but what we have to do is we have to make sure the files are named correctly. We're going to start at the very top, and we're going to name this Vicky, because that's her name. Animation cannot be renamed because that's the holder, but we can rename the action. We're going to do Vicky _ walk backwards drunk. The reason we want to make this really descriptive is because if we have two models that, like, let's say they both have the walk cycle, the same issue with the jello comes into play. But also for us, we might not realize that two models that have the exact same walk cycle name might actually have different walk cycles. So it can be a big issue further down the line. When we go over to this, this is her skeleton. I'm just gonna put in Vicky Bones. For these, I like to capitalize the flag, which is this at the very end, because it makes it easier to see at a glance what it is. Do Vicky eyebrows. And I'm going to do mesh at the very end. Great. So we have our things, our files named correctly. As you can see though, the actual materials are still not named correctly. And that's kind of a bummer, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to rename that to Vicky Matte. The reason we do this is because when we go into it, Unreal again, it's going to be the same jello issue, where it's going to be like, man, I don't know, there's a lot of high poly stuff and materials. So Vicky Matte. Basically, giving as many things as you can a unique name is probably the best idea, just in case you have an issue where two things have the same name and you don't have to go back through all your files to figure out what it's trying to figure out. Great. So we have everything done. I'm not going to save her because I don't actually want to save her as a Blender file. Think of it as a notebook. And if I saved her in it, I would be taking a whole page and just keeping it. But I don't want the whole page, I just want the picture on top of it. So basically, I'm cutting her out of it. Because it's easier to transpose one, like, little cutout, rather than trying to get a whole page, just saving it when I'm not going to be using it for anything else, right? Imagine that she's just really corrosive and she totally ruins the page for everybody else. And the reason I said open up a new Blender file is because Blender, even when you delete a model and their mesh and their rigs and everything else that comes with them, they'll have residue left over. And the residue will get into everything. It'll just totally gunk up the rest of your project. The best way to see your residue is go over to your Blender file and start clicking on these, and when you have multiple models in the same file, you'll notice that they will go into the same thing. And you can actually have issues with your materials. You'll have like 15 materials when you only need 5. So it's really good just to keep it clean by keeping it minimalistic. We're going to export her as an FBX, and this is really important. We're going to do the path to copy and click this. This will keep our materials with her. Click Shift and click on Empty, Camera, Lamp, and Other. We need the armature and the mesh. We don't need anything else. We're going to scroll down, and the Bake animation is already clicked for us. What this does is it basically really attaches the animation to this model and to this rig specifically. When to do something, I go to her file. I'm actually going to go to Practice, Vicky Test. There's another one here. I'm going to name this one Animating History, which is the flag for this project, Vicky, which is her name, and then what this action is. So, walk backwards, drunk. Action. Double check everything's good, and I'm going to hit Export FBX. I'm going to click out. I'm not going to save. If you're really nervous though, and it took you a long time to figure out something, it's totally okay to save, because it makes it so you can go back and actually edit the FBX in Blender without having to redo all of your work, which is really nice. So that's exactly how you do it.